Welcome, folks. Thanks all of you for tuning in here. I'm here with Ben Wessel. How's it going,
It's
Ben?
going super well. I'm pumped up from that video.
Yeah, it makes us want to get outside and go do something here. So thanks all of you for tuning in and signing up with Protect Our Winters to be part of the solution to the climate change. So anyways, I'm here in Bozeman, Montana in my office in the new reality of virtual meetings, which is a good thing. We are still all connected, albeit in a slightly different way, but we're here together. So Ben, my question to you, and perhaps to many of the viewers that are out here with us, is what is NextGen America?
Totally. Good question. And thanks for having me, Conrad, and thanks to the whole POW team. NextGen America is a super PAC that helps turn out young people to go vote in the most critical elections of our time. And I'm honored to be the executive director of NextGen. We are based here in San Francisco, but we do work in battleground states all across the country, making sure that we're turning out 18 to 35-year-olds to be registered, motivated, and casting ballots. We're sort of like a multi-issue, generally progressive organization that turns out voters who care about climate change and climate justice, immigration justice, progressive economics, all these sorts of issues that are so central to the lives that young people lead. I'll be real, I got my start in political activism as a climate advocate. I was always outside on my snowboard or backpacking in the mountains, the Green Mountains or the White Mountains of New Hampshire and Vermont. And I was really seeing a lot of a lack of political action from people my age, even though the decisions that were being made were going to be made about my future, right? And so as I got slowly more and more involved as a climate advocate, I was like, it really seems like there's a young person's voice that's missing here. And so NextGen, which is something that we helped start in late 2013, is all about amplifying the voice of young people, make sure we take our power when it comes to politics. And I think one of the things, not to like plug POW too heavily, because y'all already know how great POW is, you're on this call. One of the best things about POW is it provides an insight into how young people can get involved in their own communities with their own friends through their outdoors community. But how about you, Conrad? I mean, you're a legend in the climbing world. Like, how did you become an activist?
Well, before I get there,
right.
I'm gonna unpack what is a super PAC, because we're familiar with backpacks, we're familiar with six packs, what other things can we riff on packs? But what is a super PAC, and why should the millennial generation understand what a super PAC is, and why are there super PACs that are taking away our backpacks?
Totally. I am very familiar with both backpacks and super PACs as well. We are an organization that's set up to influence elections, right? So rather than being a charity that would give to outdoors programs, or rather than being a social welfare organization that would get activists in the streets to protest, we spend our time influencing elections. And so having a super PAC, which I think all of us think about as like sort of an evil, big money, corporate thing in politics, having a super PAC allows us to communicate with young people as voters, make sure that they're able to understand the difference between the candidates on their ballots and actually go vote for the person who's going to look out for their best interest.
Sweet. So super PACs doesn't necessarily mean something that's rolling in with millions and millions of dollars.
No, I mean,
a designation.
I spend a decent amount of my time fundraising, so I think we're doing an okay job. We're getting some money in the doors. But no, it's just about voter education, making sure people know who to go vote for and how to vote.
Sweet, sweet. So back to your question, how did I get started in where I'm at? So, gosh, my parents were politically active. They instilled in me the responsibility as a citizen of the United States and how we vote and what things are important to us. And my father's side of the family is from Central California, Tuolumne County, and he was kind of ran against the grain, went to university, and kind of got out of Big Oak Flat. I was born in San Francisco, but that's where our family's from. So it was always this. We went on vacation in the high country, so that was what we did, and enjoyed the backcountry and camping and things like that with our family. And then there's also a connectivity with that we have to take care of that. So my father, at one time, he's now deceased, was the chapter chair for the Central Sierra Club, which was kind of intense because they were. I mean, it was the hate mail and phone calls that he got, but he stood up
That's
for it.
badass.
Yeah, so this was back in the 80s and whatnot. So, but it's always been this thing. And where I'm at, I've been fortunate to be able to live a life of adventure, being in the mountains and doing things that I love. But I also realized that these places that we love, the forests, the animals that live in those forests, the biozones that we care about, don't have anyone to speak up for them. You're not going to see salamander going to testify in Congress about climate change. It's not going to happen. They're lucky just to exist underneath a mossy rock. And the other side of it is that I realized, having climbed in the Himalaya since the 1980s, that our planet is rapidly changing. And if I didn't take what little lever I have as a public person to advocate for climate change, the future generations are going to see a vastly different place than what we experienced in the mountains. And so, again, speaking up on behalf of people, of bioregions, of something as inanimate as a glacier, which is simply water in the frozen state, to the atmosphere, that it by doing so, we make our planet a better place for future generations.
Totally. I'm in now. I'm like, okay, let's go climbing. Let's go backpacking. You're getting me all excited.
That's always yeah. Well, that's good. And I've really been fortunate to be part of Protect Our Winters. Jeremy Jones is a great friend of mine, and we climbed Denali together in 2013. And since then, it's always been a wonderful opportunity to work with him and take his vision of what we see the future of our planet and bringing it to people. And obviously, right now, we're in the midst of a global pandemic. It is unprecedented. There's an incredible amount of uncertainty. But what's interesting is that we have this opportunity. This is The Economist magazine. So this is like a pretty right of center type publication. But look at what it says there. It says, seize the moment. And that's pretty cool about climate change, the chance to flatten the climate curve. And so in the midst of this, they're talking about this. And this is a news journal that is read by the titans of business and everything like this. And if we don't realize the impact that climate has immediately on our life and going forward in future generations, that we're amiss. And if we had one silver lining to this crisis that we're now in, is that we've been able to see how the environment, how our planet responds to a lessening of carbon. So less travel, less air travel. We've seen everything from dolphins swimming in Venice to bears walking through urban areas and things like this. It's like, wow, it only took 8 weeks for this to happen. Can you imagine if we really worked at it and we made this change for the rest of our life? And so, yeah, like climbing mountains, nothing's easy, but the challenge is what makes it good. And so I can't imagine a bigger or more audacious challenge than taking on climate change. So that's why I'm here. I want to work hard. And all of you that are listening in, you're part of this. We're going to make this happen together.
I like it. Now I know that Conrad Anker is a titan of business that reads The Economist magazine.
Well, I got to see what you got to be well versed, right? So that came in the mail today, and I was psyched to see that. So
nice.
I read the Union of Concerned Scientists, the Sierra Club Journal. I mean, I want to get news from all sides of the things, and as unbiased and as honest as we can get. And the fact that a publication as reputable as this magazine places climate as a serious issue and has done so for the past decade is indication that we need to listen up and start making change happen.
Totally. Well, I mean, I guess one of the things that we at NextGen are doing, and I know the folks at Power are doing to sort of seize the moment, right, is the 2020 election, right? We're about 160 days out from the November election. And one of the things that you and I were talking about earlier was about what's at stake, right? And we all know every election we always say is the most important of our time, but it really feels to be true in my mind in this moment, right? We have, of course, the presidential election where there's so much different issues that are affected by who's in the White House, everything from who are the secretaries who control the EPA or the Department of Energy, or the Secretary of Interior who controls public lands, but also all across the country, especially in a bunch of states where there's a ton of outdoors enthusiasts, like a Colorado or a Maine or North Carolina. There's huge Senate races going on as well. And so one of the things that we at NextGen are doing to make sure we're capitalizing on this moment and seizing this moment is getting all these young people out to vote in both the presidential, Senate races, and then everything else, governor, Congress, everything down the ticket. Making sure everyone is registered and able to cast a ballot safely is kind of the name of the game here. I mean, I would ask you, I know you're based in Bozeman, Montana, like, what's at stake right now in Montana? What are you hearing? How's it going? I know you have crucial elections there this year too.
Yeah, we have one of our Senate seats is up for re-election. Don Tester was in 2018. That was the last time around. So 2020. Now we have our other Senate seat is up for is up for ballot. And so Governor Bullock, who is letting go of being a governor due to term limits, has stepped in to potentially be our senator. And so this is for someone that cares about open lands, public spaces, the climate. He's a great candidate, and he sees things the way we do. And that when we think about where power is vested in the United States, there's a tremendous amount of power in the Senate. They are there for 6 years. There's 100 of them. And so when you have 50 states and you're in a state such as Wyoming or Montana, Wyoming's under 1 million, we're just a hair over 1 million, that this position, this one of 2 Senate seats is very important on what's going on. So that's is something that we see within that. And we're kind of at a crossroads in Montana. We are first in the nation in coal reserves. We're third in the nation in coal extraction. We have coal-fired electricity plants that sell electricity to throughout the Pacific Northwest. So, but within that, we also have this tremendous opportunity of wind and solar and hydro. Hydro is mostly been accounted for, but as wind and solar comes more prevalent and more economically feasible, we are again faced with a great opportunity, but within that opportunity comes responsibility. And within that sense, that responsibility starts by having elected officials that speak on behalf of the values that you as a citizen hold dear to your heart.
Totally.
Which is kind of good fun. So, but yeah, a couple of things that we were chatting about, Ben, before we came in here was sort of the rollback of the protection, the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States that was set up in the Nixon administration to protect the water and the air that we as citizens require for a living and are a part of it. And we've had this amazing, in a negative sense, rollback of environmental rules. And if there's anything that can further have a cascading effect on the climate, this is one of them. Totally.
I think one of the things that we think a lot about when we ask ourselves at NextGen what's at stake in every election for young people, we oftentimes think about, you know, the huge big picture like the EPA and who's on the Supreme Court. But one of the things I really admire about POW and some of the work that you mentioned in Montana and some of the work that NextGen is doing is there's so many decision makers down ballot as well, right? Who your mayor is, who's on your public lands commission, who is ensuring that they're in the state legislature. And so one of the things that I think is really crucial that those of us as outdoor enthusiasts or as climate advocates can do is make sure we're educating ourselves on who's on our ballot, right? It's not just about the presidential, it's everyone up and down has a huge impact on what's going to matter to us. And so one of the things that's pretty cool to me when I think about what NextGen is doing is we're giving young people recognition that like you may feel like you're only one vote in a sea of 300 million Americans, but that one vote has insane power when you look at what's happening in your town and in your city and what's happening down ballot. And so I think one of the things that we have to always remind ourselves as people who maybe aren't so used to going to the polls for random primaries that happen in the spring is actually the size of our power can be really big, no matter if it's a big federal election or a small local one, and it can have really outsized dividends. I mean, you were talking about public lands in Montana and about how that's controlled by the governor, who there's only 1 million people that could vote for the governor, so every last vote really super matters.
Yeah, on a similar basis here in Montana, we have the Public Services Commission. So this is 5 elected officials that regulate, in theory, the power supply, and that's Northwest Energy here in the state of Montana. And so to have a voice in that is really key. And you might think, well, okay, I'm voting for the presidency, that might bring me to it. But for something like the Public Services Commission, where there is a need for transparency, there's a need for accuracy on that, that vote really is important. And some of the things that ways to not favor the fossil extraction industry, to be equitable about it, to not buy energy as favoritism that then puts the burden on the ratepayers. A lot of these things are really key to it. And I didn't realize it until too late, but I realize now I have a very small voice in the big sea of 300+ million people. And damn if I'm not going to let that go by. So we are here to make a difference come November, right?
Right. Well, I mean, one of the things that you just said that I think is so important that I'm always so impressed every time I work with you or Jeremy or anyone at POW. And I've had the real great opportunity to help lead some policy or politics trainings for some of the amazing athletes at POW, which was super fun. One of the things that's really impactful is, sure, you maybe only have one vote, but your voice can carry magnitudes, right? And so one of the things we do at NextGen, and one of the things that Protect Our Winners does so well, is identify these key influencers, the Conrad Ankers of the world, that are going to be able to have a persuasive conversation or even just a persuasive Instagram post to get your audience or your community out to vote. So one of the things that's at stake for us at NextGen, one of the things that we're really excited about organizing this year is some Instagram influencers, some YouTubers, some spokespeople who don't normally speak out about political issues, like you were mentioning, and saying, look, this year it's too important to ignore. I may be a makeup artist on YouTube or a drag queen on Instagram or a really famous angler who's got a lot of Twitter followers. But what I have to say is going to be uniquely persuasive to a bunch of young people. And so I think the fact that you're lending your voice, not to like, butter you up and say, celebrate Conrad Anker, but like the fact that you're lending your voice, I think goes a lot further than just 1 in 300 million. So props to you, man. We look for more people like you out there. So thank you.
Yeah. And I realize now at age 57 that if I don't put my shoulder to the wheel with this election and where we are, that if I'm at age 80 or 90 and I recollect what I did with my life as I'm going to sleep at night. And I was like, oh, yeah, 2020, it was no big deal. It was like financial crisis, pandemic, the environment, all this stuff. I just went climbing and grew my portobello mushrooms and enjoyed my IPA. No, I'd rather take the heat from people that are going to say, hey, you're out to lunch, but I'm standing up for what I believe in, because there's millions of acres, there's millions of people that rely on what we do and what we say as people in here. So that's kind of a key thing with that. And so I really appreciate that, Ben.
I got your back.
So yeah, there's a key thing there. So oftentimes people are like, well, it makes no sense. You're talking to the choir. And so probably everyone that's on this call today, yeah, you are the choir. But when you think about it, it's the choir that comes in early, that practices, that rehearses, that sweeps out the church, that keeps everything clean and tidy. They are the glue and the connectivity of that community. So if you're listening to this, see that 65331 or 65351. 65351. Yeah, you've already signed up to get in here, but imagine if you got 10 people to do that and you sign up and we get our voter activation, you get into this process. We're here with Protect Our Winners, and how strong our voice is going to be across the nation. Yeah, that's something good. It's like getting your personal fastest time on a run and landing that jump on a mountain bike, or sending that hard rock climb, or not burning your eggs, or whatever you do in the morning. It's like a personal victory. You take those things and you allow them to, you empower yourself with them.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the ways, the way you just said that about how we're the choir, I think it's one of the things that inspires me most about the work we do at NextGen, right? One of the things we know that is so motivating to young people, and I imagine is motivating to outdoor enthusiasts of all ages, is when you recognize there's more of us than there are of them, right? Whoever the they is, right? For young people, there's actually more young people eligible to vote in the United States than any other age group, but we cast ballots at half the rates of older people. So it's no wonder that politicians ignore our needs, right? When we show up, they have no choice but to listen to us. And so I think one of the things that's so crucial about this concept of the outdoor state that doesn't know bounds is that across the country, there are more outdoor enthusiasts than there are of our opponents, the people who are willing to log or mine or to ignore the climate crisis. But it's when we show up and when we organize our communities to show up is when we can actually make a difference for those politicians, when we can force their hand to say, we have to switch to clean energy, we have to protect the EPA, we have to protect our public lands. And I think one of the things that you and I were talking about, and one of the reasons we want everyone to text outdoor state to 65351 is to make sure everybody knows how to vote safely during a pandemic, right? Because we are in a situation right now where election administration is a little bit all over the place. And in every state, something different is happening to make sure that people can vote by mail or even register to vote from the comfort of their own homes, rather than have to go out and risk safety versus participation in our democracy. And so one of the things that I'm so excited to do as a super PAC for good is make sure that all our young people know how to cast a ballot by mail, right? In some states like a Colorado or a Utah, everybody pretty much votes by mail. But in Wisconsin or Florida, it's actually pretty rare. And so we're trying to make sure everybody understands how to get to cast a ballot safely. And then we also know it's really, really critical to have like everyone register to vote at their current address. And while we may all be voters who are part of the choir who know how to do this, we all know young people in our communities, or people who have just moved, or people who live in a van and don't know what their permanent address is. I mean, my guess is you know a lot of climbers who live in and out of their cars. It can be really tricky to figure things out. And so that's one of the things that I'm so excited that POW is working so hard on, is to make sure everybody understands how to register, how to vote by mail, and then also what the difference between the candidates on their ballot is. I know we've got a poll in the chat right now about what do you find most challenging about voting, and people often say, I don't know who or what to vote for. And so by pledging to vote with POW or with NextGen or with anyone else, you're opting into getting some more information about who's on your ballot.
Yeah, it's a great way of looking at it. I've been an absentee voter due to my travel. Pre-COVID, I would oftentimes be on the road in November or in June when we had our the 2 times a year that elections happen in Montana. So I filled out my absentee ballot, and it's something you can do, and I really enjoy doing it. The ballot shows up in the mail. I open it up and I put it on the little nook we have in the kitchen where important things go, and I look over it over a series of days, and we have a conversation, my wife and our children, about the responsibility we have to vote, and that that all these things are of great interest. And so there's that comfort and being able to do it, and the security of having it signature matched. Those are all in there. And there's this that it is going to lead to voter fraud. That's probably not the case. It's certainly not the case. And we have to like overstep that and see that rather than voter suppression, we need to have voter uplifting. We need to bring people in. We need to celebrate this right and responsibility as citizens of the United States.
Totally. I mean, one of the questions that I'm seeing come through in the chat, and I just want to remind folks, feel free to throw a question in the chat. We'll do our best to get to them. I mean, to that very point, Conrad, someone asked, how has coronavirus changed the way candidates are reaching out to voters? And what are those new tactics that we might see? I mean, from us at NextGen as a super PAC, we're not allowed to talk directly to the candidates, but we are often the first person to reach out to a young person. And we've done it very differently during coronavirus times, right? We can no longer go out and knock on doors or have a clipboard outside the climbing gym like we might normally do it. Instead, we're spending a lot of time where a lot of young people spend their time, which is on their phones, via text, via giving people an old-fashioned phone call. One of the things that I'm most proud that we've done is actually we started to get into video games and esports and communicate with young people who we know spend a lot of time there. So we hosted the first ever political rally on Animal Crossing, which is a Nintendo video game, where we had dozens of people join our Earth Day rally inside Animal Crossing and all get registered and commit to vote with their own virtual little avatars. It's been pretty fun to try that out. But one of the things that I think is so fascinating to me about some of what you were saying there, Conrad, is these are new tactics, and everyone, whether it's NextGen or POW or every candidate, is going to have to try something a little bit different. I mean, I'm gonna blow up your spot a little bit. You did mention that you are carrying your mask around with you everywhere you go because of COVID times. I'm gonna make you show it off because it's very cool, and I can guarantee, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. Skulls and crossbones.
I can guarantee we're going to see a new fad this year of candidate supporting masks of, so I don't know. I don't want to, we've got some cool POW swag here. I don't want to say that there's going to be some cool snowboard ski mask. It's just an idea. But that's a way that I think campaigning will change in coronavirus.
A POW neck gaiter would be great because you can also use them as a way to reduce the amount of particulates or spray that when you're in a public place. And so, but this neck covering, I've had it for years, and it has skulls and crossbones, and I wear it on my most scary and dangerous climbs because I'm not afraid of death. Of course I am, but I don't want to. I want to like make peace with it. I'm on the climb, and by that same measure, I'm not afraid of where we are in this election. And if we put our shoulder to the wheel and work hard, we're going to be the change that we're all looking for. So that's kind of a key thing along those lines. But well, there we go. Yeah, whatever you wear.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So anyways, there's always good fun with that.
I'll shout out another question from the chat, which was, can you get an absentee ballot and mail-in ballots across the country, right? And so one of the things that I know you mentioned to me, and you said a little bit earlier, is you've been an absentee voter for a long time because you're often even out of the country climbing somewhere else. To answer that question from just like, it's a 50-state process with 50 different answers, unfortunately. But we know that in almost every state, you can vote absentee. And in many states where you usually have to have an excuse about, oh, I have to work out of state or out of my town or county that I live in, we now know that states are changing their rules, that coronavirus is an acceptable excuse to request a mail-in ballot, which I think is really a step in the right direction to ensuring democracy can really be accessed by everyone, and no one has to risk their own personal safety in order to cast a ballot. So what I would encourage anyone who's watching to do is go to your state election website. They can be a little outdated. Our state governments don't really invest in web infrastructure all the time, but look up how to cast a mail-in ballot or how to request an absentee ballot. I know from NextGen and a bunch of the states that we work in that I know POW does a ton of work in, everywhere from Arizona to Michigan. You can request that ballot pretty easily online. And Conrad, you said you've been doing this forever. Have you been doing this? How long do you think, when do you think you cast your first absentee ballot?
Oh, well, I moved to Montana in 2001 when Jenny and I got married, and I haven't missed an election. I remember one time running out of the ice climb to make sure that I got to the polling booth just in time and kind of jogging in there, kind of sweat drenched outdoor clothing and the fragrance that's and the wonderful people that were working there were like, "Oh, you came from a long ways, young man." So that was kind of the instance with that. But for a while now, for a decade, and it's something that we think about the people are allowed to vote and the democracy of it, and that people have given up their lives for this right and this responsibility, this privilege. It's something that we should take very much, very seriously, and that we are the beacon for what's just and right on this planet. The United States, we are this experiment in democracy, and yes, we have major challenges. I mean, we have dark chapters in our history. We continue to not be the fair, equitable nation that provides equity for all citizens. We get that, but we can't be perfect, and don't let being perfect getting in the way of doing the right thing. And that's where we're all at together, because all these things that we care about, from social justice to climate reality to all these things are interconnected to it. And if we don't speak up, we're going to see this lopsided power balance that's going to shower themselves with taxes at the rest of the nation's expense, tax breaks, that is, and kind of further separate who we are as a culture. So every election, it's like, hey, youth, wake up, get out there and vote. And then everyone like, you let us down afterwards. So let's not let that, let's not hear that again as we come, as we approach November this year, 2020.
I mean, I'm curious, another question that we've seen in the chat, which is about the stakes of what's going on in the election. You know, Conrad, you were talking about climbing Denali with Jeremy Jones. Did you see the impact of climate change sort of firsthand during that? Do you feel like voting is going to be able to help fix some of those challenges?
Yeah, great question. Most of when you're up on a mountain for 2 weeks or something like that, you see a snapshot of weather. You don't see climate, which is weather over a long-term type of, and this is, we rely on scientists and we rely on data. Pretty much the world has been very accurate with temperature and climate observations now for 150 years. So trust the science on that. On a first-hand experience, going up to Alaska, when I was there with Jeremy Jones, and we were there in 2013, I was looking at a route on the northwest face of Mount Hunter that my friend Seth and I climbed in 1989. And I looked up at that mountain and it was like, OMG, WTF, that thing is melted out. It was not you wouldn't want to go up there. I mean, when it melts out, the rock is recently exposed, there's greater risk to rock fall. It's just not climbable as an ice climb. And so it was sort of like this, hello, wake up. And then the other side of it was that Hilton Base Camp, which is where the fixed wing aircraft come in and out to land you, had to be moved up glacier. So those were two very real examples of climate that I was able to take in on a visceral and emotional level, and they're part of my motivation to stay connected on climate. But that's yeah, thanks for that question. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'll just chime in really quickly with another answer here. Like I was lucky enough, I spent some time in the Norwegian Arctic about a decade ago, learning from a bunch of scientists about the changes that were happening in the moment. And I always thought it was fascinating to get that, okay, you have to go to some remote place to see the changes. And it really hit home for me here in California in the last year or two, where all of our wildfires just totally went bananas, crazy, much more intense than they ever were before. And when it comes to actually being able to be an outdoors enthusiast if you can't get out into the woods, if you can't get into the mountains because they're all on fire, it really affects our life pretty drastically.
Yeah, and we've all seen instances where the climate has changed, and so we all get outdoors. That's why we love the life that we live, and we're connected, and that's why you're listening in here. And so when we go outdoors, there's a fair amount of thermal regulation that we go through. You're either hot, you're cold, you're sweating, or you're cold at night, or it's hot in the sun. So you kind of understand what temperature is, and so you have a real connection. And so that leads us right into it, and where you see that happening, and tie that in with the data that the climatologists are bringing to us. And it's to say that climate change is not something that threatens the human species is you're putting your head in the sand, and you're neglecting your responsibility to future generations. And so people come in, there's like, well, why should I vote? Or like, I'll meet someone, a youngster out at the gym. I'm like, hey, you're over 18. Are you registered to vote? Do you know you have this? It's like so awesome. It's like doing a climb or riding a roller coaster. You get to vote. And so I try to frame it in something that's really fun and happy and positive. And so that's kind of like the foundation of it, not like this something to be feared, and something doing the right thing. And when you vote, you have the right and the permission to grouse about the political scene. So if you're not voting and you're still grousing about what's going down, come on, get off your duff, register to vote. Then you can be part of the conversation. That's the first step.
I like it. The motivational message from Conrad Anker is get off your duff. I'll just chime in with one last sort of motivational message. That is the reason I'm going out to vote this year, and I hope that everybody else on the call will too, and something to share with your family and friends. To me, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, I'm a numbers guy. It all comes down to the math. I truly believe there are more of us who agree with the vision of a more sustainable world, a safe and livable climate future, a more equitable society for all of us, than there are people who are opposed to that, right? There's more of us than there are of them, but we don't make our voices heard when the moment matters most, when we can cast a ballot. And it's not chastising, and I don't want to be a nag, but the honest answer is when you look at the numbers, more of us just don't show up. But if we do, and when we do, the world starts to get better and things change in our favor. And so when we look at examples, whether it's in the state of Nevada, where we were able to elect a majority women state legislature that passed the most robust climate bill, frankly, in the West, unanimously after 2018, we have examples of when young people, when outdoors people show up to vote, our lives get better and we start to see the change that we want in the world. So you can take Conrad's get off your duff, or you can take
Ben's be the change you want to be. Yeah, that's a good one there. You gotta like that. So, but anyways, we're gonna I guess have everyone that's here. I've got 2 books and some coffee mugs that Lindsay and the team over at POW. We're so thankful for all of them for helping getting this off the ground, and having all of you listen in there. And thank you for your time. And we realize time is the most precious thing you have, and we thank you for listening in, and share the good word. We're out here together, and we're going to win this. Yeah.
Appreciate you, brother.
So, yeah, there we go. So thanks everyone for tuning in. I don't know how we sign off. I mean, we do.
We'll give a little salute, and we'll remind everyone.
Oh yeah,
we're terrible at this, man.
Yeah, Jim and Hillary are coming up on the next one. So Jim Morrison and Hillary O'Neill, they skied Lhotse, which is a pretty wild type of event, and so they're going to be joined by Jesse. And so this conversation, we're there next Tuesday. Tune in, bring a friend, be part of the solution. Let's have fun.
Thanks, y'all. Don't forget to vote. Really
Peace
appreciate
out.
it.